Angeles City is located 50 miles northwest of Manila, not far from Clark Air Base. During the Cold War, it was the largest base of its kind outside the United States. Today, it continues to be popular with tourists and is home to many retired expats. The city is known for its tropical weather and entertainment, including the famous clubs and bars around the red light district on Fields Avenue. It's this heady mix of tropical paradise, low-cost living, and nightlife that has made the city an appealing destination for foreign retirees and expats. However, in 2010, a number of gruesome murders would shake this community. A serial killer was stalking the city, a killer who was targeting foreigners. The killings would strike fear into the local community and over the course of a month, leave 9 people dead. Today we examine the Angeles City expat serial killer. July 2010, the Oasis Hotel, Angeles City. Hotel staff enter one of the rooms of a foreign guest to find a shocking and gruesome sight. Canadian Jeffrey Allen Benon and his Filipino girlfriend Abigail Helena were lying dead. Both had been shot in the head. The resort had been a popular haunt for foreigners, known for its swimming pool, good food, and relaxed, friendly environment. Benon and his girlfriend had been enjoying a long vacation together in Angeles City, but now both lay dead, the victims having been shot at close range and their faces covered with objects from the hotel room. The police would quickly seal off the crime scene looking for clues. They noticed no signs of forced entry into the room or any kind of struggle. However, a number of electronic gadgets belonging to Benon, including a laptop and cell phone, had been stolen. Unusually, other items of value, like jewellery and money, had not been taken. Unbeknownst to police, this would be the first in a spate of mysterious and gruesome killings in the city. Four days later, on July 16, Briton James Bolton Porter and his 22-year-old girlfriend Melissa Madarang were shot at their home in their house in Malabanas Village, Santa Maria subdivision. The killer had struck again, shooting both Porter and Madarang in the head and chest. Subdivisions in the Philippines are gated communities, often favoured by expats and middle-class local Filipinos for their high walls, iron gates and security guards, affording the residents better security. However, the killer had once again managed to evade security and struck with no witnesses and no sign of forced entry. Police investigators would almost immediately note the similarities to the killings 4 days earlier. Both crimes had used the same type of weapon. Both were foreign men, and electronic items had been stolen from both crime scenes. Once again, the victims had their faces covered with random objects. In the space of 4 days, the killer had murdered 4 people, and although the police had linked the 2 crimes, they were still at a loss as to who the killer was. 6 days later, on July 22, 2010, the killer would commit his most brutal and indiscriminate killing yet. Retired American Master Sergeant Albert Mitchell, aged 70, was a retired US Air Force veteran. He lived with his wife Jeanette and their 3 Filipino staff in their Angeles City home. On the morning of July 22nd, the killer would visit the Mitchells' home. Upon entering, he would shoot Albert Mitchell and his wife Jeanette in the head and chest. The sound of gunfire immediately alerted the 3 Filipino staff in the house, Isabel Fajardo, Marissa Prado, and Gilberto Catley, but it was too late for them to escape. The killer shot all 3 of them. In the space of only a few minutes, the carnage had left 5 victims dead, all with bullet wounds to the head and chest. The killer quickly set about robbing the house of all its valuable electronic items, including cell phones and laptops. But as the killer fled the crime scene with the stolen items, he would be spotted. A village security guard and motorcycle driver had been nearby the Mitchells' property. They heard the commotion and would see a man fleeing the scene of the crime. Having been spotted, it would lead to a chain of events that would ultimately lead to his capture. By now, the media were reporting that a serial killer was at large. The case had struck fear into the community of locals and expats alike. Would the killer strike again, and who would be next? It prompted a foreign expat to offer 100,000 pesos, or $2,500 reward, to anyone who could provide information that led to the killer's arrest. The police investigation noted the theft of gadgets and the use of a single firearm to commit the murders. However, one of the most compelling pieces of evidence the police had was the lack of forced entry. The victims had stayed in hotels and gated communities, which all had good levels of security. None of the victims had put up a struggle, and the killer had gained entry without a break-in. The implication of this was clear. The victims knew their killer. Mark Dizon was a 28-year-old computer technician and reflexologist. He came from a well-off family and by all accounts had a stable upbringing. However, Dizon had been in trouble with the law before. In 2003 he was accused of carjacking and theft, and in 2005 a warrant was issued for his arrest. He pled not guilty and the case didn't go to trial. Dizon had what would later be described as an abnormal obsession with gadgets. His work as a computer technician meant he worked with computers and phones regularly, and it was this unhealthy obsession with gadgetry that would seemingly drive him to kill. Perhaps most chillingly of all was his fascination with guns. He would regularly post photos on his social media accounts with different firearms, including rifles and a pistol, the same weapon he would use to commit the grisly murders. Ironically, it would be computers and his gadget obsession that would lead to his downfall. After murdering 5 people, Dizon had been spotted fleeing the Mitchells' home by the village guard and a motorcycle driver who happened to be nearby. They were able to work with police to release a sketch of the suspected killer. This sketch would then be released to the public. In a twist of fate, Maritz Androneda, a niece of one of the victims, knew the killer. She lived with the Mitchells, but fortunately was not at home when the murders took place. She was a mutual friend of Mark Dizon on Facebook. He was likely also known to the couple's daughter Cesarina, who had also had the good fortune not to be at home at the time of the killings. She saw the police sketch and thought it resembled Dizon. She recognized him as a regular visitor to the home, often helping to repair laptops and other electronic items for the family. After hearing descriptions of the suspect from witnesses and viewing the sketches, she began to investigate and covertly looked him up on his Facebook page. When she showed his picture to the security guard who had witnessed the killer running from the house, he immediately confirmed it was him, the man who had visited the house and fled after the murders. Police quickly released his photo to the media, and one of the largest manhunts in recent times was launched. Around this time, Dizon called his family and claimed he wanted to join the Communist New People's Army, the NPA, an armed paramilitary group operating in the countryside and mountainous areas in the northern Philippines. Whether this was a genuine desire or not remains unclear, but it seems more likely Dizon knew the net was closing in on him, and it was done in a last-ditch attempt to evade capture. The police seized the initiative and had an undercover operative contact Dizon and pose as an NPA member to set up a meeting with the promise of him being allowed to join the group. In a tense operation, police waited for the suspect to show. When Dizon arrived to meet his NPA contact, they moved in. Mark Dizon was arrested in a public square in the city of San Fernando, northern Philippines. His killing spree had lasted 11 days, struck fear into the local community, and left 9 people dead, 6 Filipinos, an American, a Briton, and a Canadian, in 3 separate robberies. During the subsequent investigation, the police uncovered overwhelming evidence against Dizon. He had pawned some of the possessions taken from Canadian victim Jeffrey Benon, including a laptop and cell phone. Pawnshop records and surveillance footage showed Dizon with the objects in the pawnshop only a few days after the killings, pawning these items for 20,000 pesos. Dizon's MO had been to befriend foreign nationals by offering to fix their computers and gadgets. He was known to all his victims and gained access to their homes as a friend and someone they trusted. It explained why there were no signs of forced entry or any sign of a struggle at any of the crime scenes. The victims had been unaware of the mortal danger they were in right up until the very end. Police also found a large number of illegal firearms, including a 9mm pistol, the same pistol used in all the gruesome murders. Dizon had shot all of his victims in the head and chest. The media had already dubbed him the Expat killer or gadget killer, and the police noted his bizarre and abnormal obsession with gadgets. At the crime scenes, it was observed that many valuable items, such as jewellery, cash, and personal valuables, were inexplicably left behind, with only the gadgets being stolen. Psychological reports speculated Dizon was a malignant narcissist with secondary psychopathy. He had been in trouble before for suspected theft and carjacking, and had a grandiose personality, often posting photos with guns or exotic cars. He would also tell people he worked as a bodyguard to some of the foreign nationals he had befriended. Mark Dizon's killing spree had taken the lives of 9 people. His victims had trusted him and believed he was a friend. Tragically, they had paid with their lives. It's also worth remembering that despite being dubbed by the media the Expat killer, Dizon had also killed 6 Filipinos and showed a callous and reckless disregard for human life. His killing spree was fueled by a narcissistic and psychopathic personality, a fascination with guns, and a bizarre obsession with gadgets that he was willing to kill his victims to acquire. His indiscriminate murders left 9 people dead in only 11 days. In the end, It was the gadgets and technology that he coveted so much, and a relative of one of the victims' determination to find him through social media that ironically led to his downfall. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you support what we do, consider supporting us on Patreon. The link will be in the description below. Thanks for watching and stay safe. Please share your thoughts in the comments below.